Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Chan, and I'm a Senior Director at UPS in our Supply Chain Growth Markets and Subsidiaries Technology Group. Diversity and inclusion is an engine that drives innovation that can propel us all forward. It's my pleasure today to speak to you a little bit about UPS's Diversity and Inclusion Program. As a global company, UPS's values are rooted in the diversity and inclusion that thrives inside and outside our walls. With over 500,000 employees, including approximately 5,700 in technology around the world, UPS has a unique opportunity to affect positive change in the world through our commitment to diversity and inclusion. We work closely with our customers, communities, suppliers, and employees to advance a community culture that truly embraces diversity, cultivates inclusion, and fosters open participation from those with different ideas and perspectives. The Diversity and Inclusion Program at UPS has many initiatives, such as our supplier diversity process, also UPS Foundation funding to support diversity and inclusion in our communities, and of course, our affinity groups. Our affinity groups is also known as our BRGs, or business resource groups, is a very important part of our diversity and inclusion program. This initiative started as a pilot in 2006 at 19 locations with our Women's Leadership Development Program, and has since grown exponentially to over 200 chapters across 10 focus areas beyond women's leadership. IT has 7 chapters across the focus areas. Our BRGs enable our employees to discuss their experiences, take part in professional development, and participate in programs and events that provide internal and external networking opportunities to expand their perspectives and affect change to support the growth of both UPS and the individual. Last year, we launched a Women in Technology Summit to focus on increasing the representation of women in the fields of IT and engineering. This event provided a great opportunity for our female technology leaders to connect, collaborate, and enhance greater diversity and inclusion initiatives. Thank you for your attention. Now I would like to introduce Kelly Gay, who will be moderating a Diverse World and Global Workplace session. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to the Diverse World and Global Workplace panel. We're so happy to have you with us, and thank you for joining us. And we have 3 fabulous panelists today to interact with, and so I'd like to do a quick introduction of those 3 people. First of all, we have Valerie Mackey, who's the CEO and founder of Right Now Solutions. So welcome, Valerie. So glad to hear. You'll hear a little bit more about Valerie in a minute. Turning to Rachelle Perry. Rachelle Perry, she is the resident managing director at Aeon. And then we have Peter Williams. Peter is our director of and the head of community strategy for Blackrock Atlanta. So welcome to Peter. So all 3 of you, let's start with each of you giving a more interesting introduction of yourself, as well as give us a story about something you will reflect upon positively as you look back on the year 2020. Let's go in the order that I just introduced you. Valerie.
Okay, so I don't know if it's going to be more interesting, but I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I have a background in engineering and technology. Started my career with Ernst & Young as one of those traveling consultants, jumping on a plane every week, and did that for several years until I didn't want to anymore. And then I spent 12 years at the little company in Atlanta, Coca-Cola, as a technology leader. And then, did a lot of global implementations with technology, responsible for a lot of functionality. And then I grew more of an interest in the technology talent that was doing the implementation. So I started focusing on the capability of talent. And then 3 years ago, I formed Right Now Solutions, which is kind of right at the intersection of technology skill set and my passion for growing people. So that's what I'm doing and quite passionate about now is pushing the needle and helping equity in the spaces of jobs and careers, especially in technology. And something positive that has happened in 2020. I spent a lot more time with my family because we were in the house and have been, still are, all day, even now, right now. But it's been a really good time. We've even created games. We did this whole COVID Olympics. So every night we have a different game that we have to do and we get points for. I generally lose all of the athletic games to the kids and husband. So they created like a typing game so I could win one. And that's my positive story.
Love it. Love the collaboration, the team, the family as a team. All right, let's turn to, thank you, Valerie. Let's turn to Rachelle.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So this is Rachelle Perry. As Kelly said, Resident Managing Director for the Aeon Atlanta office. And Aeon is focused on commercial risk, health, retirement, human capital solutions. So I graduated from University of Georgia with a major in risk management and insurance. And so I've spent 25 plus year career, largely on the commercial risk brokerage side of the business, with 10 of those years in New York City. On a personal level, I've been married to my wonderful husband for 23 years with my two beautiful daughters. One is a sophomore at University of Alabama at Birmingham, and the other is a freshman in high school at Mount Perrin Christian School. The story, which as I just listened to Valerie and we did not connect prior to this, our stories are actually exactly the same. So I'm going to try to give a little bit different spin. But what I was going to say is that I think one of the things that has been positive in a very challenging year for me, this year with the sort of pandemic, was the fact that I also spent a lot of time this year with my two daughters at home, which was unexpected with my college daughter having to come home in March. And so what I tell people is that I've spent this whole journey of trying to be this ambitious person in my career. But what this time, 2020, really sort of taught me or gave me a moment to reflect upon was that I was home with my daughters so much and my husband that it really allowed me to be able to just kind of exhale and realize that, I'm going to be an empty nester sooner than I probably realized it, and that I just needed to take this time to just relax with my daughters and my husband at home and just spend some quality time with my family. So similar to Valerie, I think the positive for me this year has been family time. And just not just family time, but really just not going anywhere with the family and literally just sitting at home, hanging out. And so Kelly, that's a little bit about me as well.
Love that. Love that. And, it's really been a gift to all of us, the ability to spend more time with our families. And so, Peter, let me turn to you.
Well, thank you, Kelly. And it's so great to be with all of you. Kelly, Rachelle, Valerie, thank you for letting me share this panel discussion with you all. So my name is Peter Williams. It's great to be here. I am leading our community relations effort for Blackrock Atlanta. Been with Blackrock, as Kelly sort of alluded to, for the last 14 years. It's been a long journey. Lived in San Francisco, New York, and I would never thought I would have said this, but now Atlanta. I grew up in the Southeast, never thought I'd be coming back, but Atlanta has become very special to me. And I was very honored and humbled to be able to co-lead our search effort for Blackrock's HQ2 in the United States in 2018. And little did I know the city that we would select, I would want to move to. So it's been a very exciting journey for me and my husband. I would also say family. I mean, surprisingly enough, Matthew and I have not killed each other yet. We do not have kids to give us that extra distraction, but we do have pets, which helps. I would say, though, the time together, what I've really appreciated this year is really discovering what's in all of our backyards. I think so much of the travel, my husband and I love to travel, and we are very fortunate to be able to go to so many really cool places every year. But to not be able to get on a plane safely, it's been really interesting. And so we've actually visited 5 national parks this year. And I have to say, I don't think I appreciated the great outdoors that the states have to offer. So it's been a great experience for me, my husband, and my dog, Hendrik, this year.
Love the dog's name. All right. Well, welcome, y'all. You've each mentioned your companies. You've each mentioned your histories. Let's start with a question on, since our topic is a diverse world in a global workplace, let's start with a question on your companies and what your thoughts are on how your company has weathered the year, most especially in terms of managing and leveraging the workforces within your company. What's been good? What's been a challenge? Let's start with Rachel.
Yeah, so, obviously we all kind of entered this new environment unexpected, right? And so, from a workforce, the things that's been good for us is that the technology has actually worked for the most part. And I say that because we obviously, a lot of us, everyone had to sort of pivot to an environment where you're working from home. And so, we use WebEx. And so, being able to typically get on planes and have in-person meetings with our clients, we ended up having to set up a lot of, WebEx meetings with our clients or have WebEx meetings internally. And so, what's really, and I'm surprised to say this in some degrees, yeah, there was some adjustments and we had to, but for the most part, technology has actually worked for us. Within our workforce. So we are a 50,000 plus colleague firm. And so being able to have so many people using technology, we didn't have a lot of things fall apart. Some of the challenges, once again has been, in the commercial risk or risk management community, we are very much interacting with our clients on a regular basis. And so the challenge has been, where you would have those in-person meetings with your clients and then you would, take them to dinner or happy hours, you're having to, really have more trying to figure out how you can interact with them without, those social settings. And so we've had to sort of deal with, let me send our clients, sort of like a DoorDash lunch or something where we're like having lunch over the WebEx. Or we're going to send them bottles of wine so we can do virtual happy hours. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And then the other challenge I would say too has been had so the mental health support, right? Just being able to make sure that we're giving colleagues, reminding them about our employee assistance program, and giving our colleagues childcare resources. We had to sort of change our employee benefits offering to give them more opportunities for childcare benefits. We had to be more creative around colleague engagement activity. We just had virtual bingo last week. We had a violinist come in and play some music for our colleagues in September. So, I think, trying to stay engaged with each other, trying to stay engaged with our clients, I would say have been the challenges, but the technology piece, I would say, has been something that's actually worked, surprisingly.
Perfect. Agreed. Like we're experiencing right now. Peter, let's turn to you. Leveraging your workforce within your company. What's been good? What's been a challenge?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting year, and I think we could all agree that we never thought we'd still be in this environment as we are in November. But at the end of the day, I think we've all had those unique stories and experiences to share about our kids joining our work calls, our pets joining our work calls. And what I think is interesting, there's a lot of folks that have always managed their professional lives and their careers very separate from their personal. And I'm not going to say what is a good approach or a bad approach, but the blending or the forced blending of personal and professional lives over the past, call it, 6 or 7 months, I think has created a significant amount of empathy that I think every professional has had for their colleagues. And so I think that empathy has really created a renewed sense of trust and a connection with your colleagues that I think is filling the void of us not being able to have the collisions in the office, or the water cooler conversations, or I'm running to the restroom and I happen to bump into someone who I haven't seen in a few weeks. So I don't think it's very hard to replace in-person engagement, but I do hope, and the positive I'm taking away is that I know all my colleagues' sons and daughters' names. I know the cat's name. I know the dog's name. I ask how these creatures or loved ones are doing, and I think that just creates a much stronger connection. And I hope that we can build on that connection as we start to migrate back into our offices.
Valerie, please.
So we're a talent development firm. We really help other organizations with their workforce development. And what's interesting is we've always believed for many of the trainings and coaching experiences, they had to be in person. So if you think about, we are doing from entry level to executive level of prepping people for the next stage in their life, even down to K through 12. So when COVID hit, we were doing a K through 12 program or middle school after school program, which of course you had to go to the kids, right, in order to teach them life skills and STEAM and all this stuff. Well, we didn't. So we made a pivot there and figured out you didn't have to actually be in person to do that. And then we were in the middle of a credentialing program for adults, training a workforce to get them ready to go to these corporate environments. Again, we felt like this had to be in person because this is an underrepresented population. They haven't been in technology before. They're career changers. And so we needed to be in person to make sure they got the information, understood the information. Well, we were able to switch to virtual over the weekend and continued on, and it was just fine. And then, with leadership, and you feel like those experiences have to be in person. Well, we figured out again, we could pivot and do things virtually, and it was okay. Now, what we did do was advance some of the things that were on our radar. So because many of the things we did were in-person trainings and experiences, we hadn't fully built out our e-learning platform. It was on my horizon, hadn't built it out. Well, guess what? Now it's in. I've knocked something off my to-do list. So it helps because the virtual is absolutely mandatory now. The e-learning is absolutely mandatory. And I knew we would get to it and it was on the horizon, but now we leverage that, even though in live virtual is what we do a lot with all of our programs. We also now leverage that learning management system for offline exercises. We like everything to have interaction. So we're utilizing gamification in a way that we didn't leverage gamification before when we did in person. So we're trying to figure out how to make sure we can keep pushing the workforce further along in the same ways, but in more inventive methods in doing so. So it's actually pushed us. So I actually appreciate in some way that it did make us pivot and take things to another level.
Love it. You mentioned, Valerie, early in that discussion, underrepresented populations and talent. Let's turn to that, everybody. Where is the workforce of today? Where are we going? How do we get there? And in particular, how important is it, in your opinion, to change the workforce to include more non-traditional or underrepresented talent? So workforce in general, non-traditional and underrepresented talent. Valerie, let's start with you.
Okay, so this is a topic that, of course, is near and dear to my heart. I mentioned 3 years ago, I stepped out of corporate because I wanted to push the needle a little further in how the workforce was represented. I feel like we needed more diversity in our workforce. Like we needed to give more opportunity to people that didn't necessarily take their traditional path. And I feel like that's the way the workforce is moving, to look at things other than that traditional. You went to a great university and now you're going down the path and now you're in a corporate career. That's not a bad path. Of course, that is still going to be a path. But the world is, I think, going towards a place where maybe the four-year degree is not a barrier for all positions. And those are some things that I'm really looking forward to, is to see that, especially with digital natives, you have people that are digitally native, and I guess I'm speaking for more of the technology professionals, that you can actually be a developer and you may not have gone down the same path. I think as we are starting to widen even the pipeline and people that are doing recruitment, the sources of where to get talent. So you have the workforce development programs like we run, and boot camps and HBCUs and traditional universities. There's so many different places to get talent that the more we make it diverse, the better our solutions are going to be. This is not just doing something because it's something to do. A diverse workforce is going to give us diverse solutions, diverse revenue streams. It is good for business. It is good for the bottom line. So I think it's hugely important to diversify our work population at all levels.
And if I can jump in too, I was just going to say that, we're seeing, this is a very interesting time at Aeon on this whole topic as well, because there was, with the sort of greater utilization of technology, there's certain functions and things that are, we're leveraging technology more and more, which is also changing our workforce talent needs. But the one thing that we're actually this timing of this conversation, this dialogue, Kelly, is really very timely, because we are actually we have an apprentice program that Aeon rolled out in Chicago, which is our US-based headquarters. And it's been successful in Chicago for, I don't know, I think maybe it was 3-4 years ago. And so I just started a conversation last Thursday within Aeon around expanding our apprentice program here in Atlanta, which is focused on really attracting some of our community college talent that at Aeon, we've never leveraged community college talent before. We've always been like, it had to be a 4-year degree, talent base. And so now, we're, having these conversations around sort of how do we get that sort of untraditional talent for us into Aeon, really bring them into certain, roles that we can actually attract that talent. It's also helping us get more diverse, because within the insurance industry, we've struggled. I mean, I'm the only Black woman office head in the entire country for Aeon, right? And there's not a lot of us in the organization, within Aeon and within the industry for that matter. And so how do we get more of that diverse talent within the insurance industry? And so being able to leverage that apprentice program, where not only are we going to pay for their tuition, we're also going to pay them to be an Aeon colleague, and we're going to provide benefits. So those are things that's really going to help us hopefully be able to attract more talent through our Aeon apprentice program. So I'm excited about exploring that here in Atlanta, and Aeon's going to roll that out into some of the other metropolitan cities as well.
Clever, love it. And Peter, Blackrock's got to have similar kind of initiatives or thoughts. Hit us.
Yeah, I think my friends on this panel have all made good points, and I think we're right there with you all. I mean, you cannot hire a diverse workforce if you take a single approach to talent acquisition. It just does not fit. And so we look back, I remember a couple of years ago, we looked back at our job descriptions, and it's amazing the bias that can appear in the first step of exposure to a potential candidate. We used to put MBA preferred on every job description. I don't have my MBA. Many of the people I work with don't have their MBAs. I have a 4-year degree, but and then you look at technology, and it's just like how there's specific roles that we're hiring that are highly technical, and many students out there are finding ways to obtain these highly technical skills without the huge investment of a college education or a bachelor's degree. And so we're finally taking, some risk, getting out of our comfort zone a little bit, and taking a chance on these students that are highly technical, but maybe don't have that other bit of experience. But there's ways that we can support them in filling that gap when what we really need is that technical skill. So there's a lot of boot camps out there. I think to Rachel's point on the, apprenticeships, or, we call it like a work experience program. I'm loving the work we're doing with Georgia State University, but what we noticed is they just need a little bit of extra support to be competitive in our internship program. And so we're doing an inter-semester work experience program that gives them a more comfortable environment to kind of get up to speed with the corporate environment. It's not necessarily their background or their skill set or their knowledge. It's just like a lot of them don't have any corporate experience. They've never been in an office space before. So there's a level of discomfort there. And that's a hurdle that we can easily get them over. And so it's just finding these very, customized approaches based on the different talent pools. But yeah, you have to take a diverse approach to how you're hiring. Otherwise, you're not going to have a diverse workforce. And as you're just facing an uphill battle. But I think it's also important to note, and I'll say this again later on, I'm sure, because I sound like a broken record player, but the job's never done. And we have to continue to try new and different things each and every day.
Give us some examples of difference-making focuses and the result it's gotten. And do you think big initiatives like that by powerful companies like Blackrock are making a difference in moving companies thinking forward on D&I? And we'll start with Peter, but then Valerie and Rachel, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think it's just directly speaking, I think it's very important that big companies make very public statements, but also follow through with action. And I know that sometimes we've made public statements and not always followed through right away. And so I'm not going to sit here and pretend Blackrock is perfect. We have lots of work to do. And I think that, our statement on gender and gender equity has gotten even more aggressive since that was initially made. I think this year, the times that we're living in, our statement of, with racial and social justice issues, and our commitment to Black leadership at Blackrock and others, I think is critical. We're in a very bizarre, we have a bizarre responsibility because we manage a lot of money on behalf of clients. We own large percentages on behalf of those clients of publicly traded companies around the globe. And so that gives us what's called like a proxy voting ability, where we can affect change at organizations around the globe. And so we've taken that process very, very seriously and hired a global head of investment stewardship, which really helps us maintain that process and make sure that we are holding all of those stakeholders accountable for hitting diversity objectives, as well as things like climate and environmental objectives as well. So we take our responsibility very seriously, but we don't necessarily come up with this by ourselves. We consult with leading experts across multiple industries governments around the globe. So it's unfair to say that, BlackRock's the gold standard and knowing exactly what the right thing to do is. That's definitely not the case. At the end of the day, we rely on those experts, and we do what we can to help our partner companies and the companies that we own huge ownership stakes of on behalf of our clients are following through with their obligations.
Oh. Well, I was just going to say, I think what I've seen progress in gender diversity at Aeon, and I think that is, to be applauded. We put, in this whole idea of sort of, putting sort of a scale initiative. There's mixed opinions around, should you, make such a definitive statement like, when BlackRock, like 2 women need to be on corporate boards, or should Aeon say we made a statement that, we want 30% of women to be in levels 1 through 3, which is like the most senior levels of Aeon, or 20% in levels 1 through 5 be people of color. And people, sometimes question, like, should you make these very definitive statements? I would say I've seen a lot more progress on the gender diversity side than I've seen on the people of color side, and so I think that there's work to be done there. I appreciate the statements, but I appreciate what Peter said, which is that there needs to be action aligned with that. And then the other piece of this that I really want to highlight is this equity piece, because I think what I've seen also is that the numbers of people are coming up, but the sort of fair compensation, fair wages, fair salaries has not always aligned with that. So you're seeing people in the same positions, women and men, or people of color that don't make the same salaries or have the same benefits. So I think it's, one of the things that we're really pushing at Aeon is diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? This whole DE&I sort of approach that we need diversity, we need inclusion, and we need equity. And I think that is, there's been more progress, obviously, on the gender front, but there's still a lot more work to do, Kelly, as you know, being part of the OnBoard board. There's more work to be done, but I'm seeing more women, at least within the walls of Aeon, but we have much more work to be done on the diversity and the people of color side, no question about it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Let's keep it moving. Aeon, let's turn to Aeon for a minute, because Aeon also has shown a commitment to creating a diverse, inclusive, collaborative workplace for your people internally. And lots of good reasons for it, but one that stood out to me was the belief that diversity drives insight, and that by giving top and diverse talent seats at the table, Aeon will produce the best outcome for clients. You all have spoken about this already, kind of a concept. How is this commitment working within Aeon? How welcoming and excited are your clients to have that concept of diversity in front of them? Please, Rachel, you start.
Yeah, so what I thought I would do, Kelly, here is to sort of use as an example. So we have within the walls of Aeon a solution group called Aeon Diversity Solution. And obviously it drives insight across the firm. But I wanted to just talk about our Aeon Diversity Solutions group for just a moment, because many of our clients are part of this sort of $1 billion roundtable, which is a group of corporations where, which they spend, first tier spend is greater than $1 billion around diverse certified firms. And so what Aeon has done is a lot of those $1 billion roundtable clients are clients of Aeon. And so what we did was to be able to sort of help our clients is to be able to engage with diverse suppliers within the professional services industry. And so that's, we oftentimes sometimes don't have or don't recognize that there are, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, whatever, that offer professional services solutions for some of our largest global clients at Aeon. And so what we did was we created this group called Aeon Diversity Solutions to be able to develop those relationships with those diverse professional service firms and then be able to really, when we get with our global clients, be able to bring those two groups together. And so that's how we're bringing value in addition to the everyday commercial risk, health, retirement, human capital solutions. We will partner with other diverse professional services firms and be able to bring those needs into some of our other clients. We call them minority business enterprises, MBEs. And so that is a sort of a way that we bring those solutions to our clients, in addition to being able to promote diversity within the professional services industry as well. And we believe that that's a competitive advantage because, a lot of clients, a lot of our competition aren't thinking about making those sort of diversity professional service initiatives or combinations, engagements, and bringing those to our clients. So that's just one example of how we think we're sort of bringing insight or bringing solutions to our clients and meeting the needs of diversity as well.
Right now, solutions. Let's kind of circle back to where we started. Focus on workforce development, talent fulfillment, social responsibility, strategy and execution, innovation strategy. You must see the whole spectrum of success, purpose, plans across a broad array of companies as relates to DE&I. Focusing on workforce development, which you mentioned at the beginning of our panel. Talk about learning experience that are needed at all levels of an organization to really push forward DEI.
Well, I will talk about one of the experiences that we do with DEI at all levels, and that is at every level, some people they want belonging, and belonging looks different at every single level that we are in. We start with this kind of session that we call being the only. And being the only represents kind of that emotional burden that people feel because they're the only woman, the only young person, the only Black person, Asian person, LGBTQ person, the only veteran, the only whatever. So there's this feeling of you have to represent for your entire community in these situations, and it causes some confidence issues. And we work through those types of issues and say, one, you're not broken, you're uniquely you. Now let's figure out how do you get past other people's biases? How do we turn these types of things into meaningful, comfortable conversations that everybody can learn from? And when you think, through that kind of being the only and kind of giving more skills around confidence and presence, then that's going to allow those levels to be able to rise up and be promoted.
This has been quite the year in terms of a real focus on racial equality, social justice, or the lack thereof up until this point. And that's equality across and social justice across all groups, not just racial equality. Lightning round question. Do you sense a difference in your company, especially as global workplaces, which two of you are, in the initiatives that you are seeing your company or your customers engage in, and the general attitude about where we are and a galvanizing going forward? Do you see a difference? And I don't want a yes or no question. Give us some depth. Let's start with you, Peter.
It's a great question, and it's an important one. So there's two areas where I see a huge difference. One, I think we are much more comfortable, even though we'll never be fully comfortable, much more comfortable in having uncomfortable conversations. And if we are not trying to force the issue and create the forums and the vehicles to have those uncomfortable conversations, we're not going to learn from one another. I have been in some of the most uncomfortable situations that I have been in and put on the spot this year is where I have learned and taken away the most. And I think as long as we have respect for one another and we have this notion that our friends and colleagues are leading with positive intent, and we don't mean harm by what we say, I think we need to hear each other and we need to learn from one another. I have learned more in the last 6 months on these very, very important topics than I have in my entire adult life. And it's because we've been having these conversations. The second thing is, I hope companies, I know Blackrock is doing so, but I hope companies, and we have more work to do, obviously, is providing safe and actionable ways that people can get involved. And so whether it's a voting initiative, a poll worker initiative, whether it's supporting organizations in the community that are advocating for racial and social justice, there's a lot of work that we can do to support our communities. But the problem is we need to provide avenues for employees to get involved. And we need to break down the walls between our companies and the community. Blackrock needs to come to Atlanta as much as Atlanta's coming into Blackrock. We're building a population at Blackrock Atlanta that is truly reflective of our community. So it's very, very, very important that we break down those walls and we allow people to get involved and be active.
And I'll just sort of add on to, I mean, obviously a lot of the stuff that Peter said, I think we agree at Aeon, but, two things I would say, Kelly. One is it's becoming part of our business. It used to be sort of this occasional little, thing that we talk about on the side. But, we have, regular meetings around our business, right? And sort of like, whether it's, local leadership, national leadership, global leadership meetings, this whole conversation is embedded in the agenda now, much more than it's ever been. And I think it's become less of just a small group of people at Aeon that care about DE&I. Discussion has become more of a business imperative across the business and an agenda topic, in my regional meetings and my local meetings and our goals. So that I think it's becoming part of the agenda, embedded in the agenda, that this is what we want this firm to look different, and we're going to talk about this as part of our business, like we talk about top line revenue and margin and all these other things. And so that's one. The other thing I would say too is this idea of, I tell people all the time, if you've never heard me say this, my parents, I'm first generation college graduate, right? So my mom was a cook and my dad was a mechanic. I didn't grow up knowing, and I think you hit on this, Valerie, earlier, how to navigate corporate America. It wasn't like, I had to figure this out over 25 years. And so, there's this skill development piece, right? That we need to get people prepared for these bigger roles and jobs. And so this idea of sponsorship is real, and having people that's going to show you and teach you and give you some techniques and way to navigate to get to those next levels. This idea of sponsorship and skill development is really another area that I'm seeing some positive changes, which is very, very encouraging.
Love it. And Valerie.
So definitely speaking my language, right? And what we're seeing with skill development and the fact that people need to understand how to navigate this landscape a little bit better. We talked about the whole upskilling and reskilling programs that we do, and it takes going through those things to understand what you have to do to get from people coming in our programs making $13 an hour to leaving 4 months of a program making $30 an hour. But there's a lot of intense learning that teaches you corporate landscape, culture, etiquette, in addition to all the hard skills. Those things, we see the difference in, and we see that starting to play out. I do think because we are advancing, not just their income, this is breaking generational poverty, which is going to increase equity. So that's why these are the right types of initiatives, because it's not just that person. You're impacting whole generations when you increase the education level and the career levels of people. Change has happened, but it is going to take people like the people on this call and probably people listening to make that change happen. I'm excited about what I'm seeing. We do have a ways to go, but I'm excited to be a part of this change.
Valerie, the change is happening. That is spot on.
Love it. Well, we have to end on that. That's just too great a place to end. I want to thank Rachel, Valerie, and Peter for joining us today. And certainly to our audience, thank you for participating.